Hey everyone, Chief Balupa here. This video is going to be a little different from ones I've done in the past, because like, people kept on asking me to do a review, a weapon review like the ones I've been doing, high effort, high quality and all that, of the backscatter. And every single time I was just like, why? Why? There ain't shit to talk about. There really isn't. In my personal opinion, this has got to be the most mid-weapon TF2 has to offer. It's okay. Like, it's totally okay. But it's so okay, it's barely worth existing. Because, like, a lot of people say that this weapon is primarily used for flanking. Like, oh, just, you know, use bonk and run behind the enemy and hit him from behind with this weapon. That's all you should do. When in reality, it's really just not good enough for that purpose. Like, it does it fine, but not really that much better than stock scattergun, to the point where it should be used like that primarily. The way this weapon should be used is the same sort of way you use the black box, which is kind of similar. You know, like, less ammo with an extra effect, which is you don't change your gameplay style at all. You just use it like a normal scattergun, which has a slight bonus against enemies that are running away from you, which is, you know, kind of nice at times. But yeah, that's literally how it should be used. Like, the best way to use it is to just not deviate from normal scout gameplay while using it, because otherwise you'll probably find yourself disappointed. The backscatter, it just feels like the normal scattergun. When getting footage for this video and every other time, there wasn't a single time while I was playing where I got a kill and felt like mini crits that I got from behind the enemy were the reason. Probably due to the extra spread the thing has, because it has, I think, 20% greater spread than the normal scattergun. But due to that, mini crits from behind often don't come from right behind your enemy, like in point blank range. They come from a little bit further away, which means there's a greater likelihood that you'll miss a few pellets, especially with the higher spread. So the mini crits from behind don't really seem to help that much when shooting enemies from behind them, simply because the extra spread seems to counteract that almost completely. And it's funny, this isn't really much of a complaint, because it feels like I'm doing basically the same amount of damage as the normal scattergun. And one reason why the negatives aren't such negatives is simply due to that reason. Like, you got shorter, a smaller magazine size, smaller tube, if you will, but that is not at all unique to Scout's unlocks. Every single other primary in Scout's arsenal has that decrease. The only other one that has 4 shells instead of 2, like the double barrels, is Baby-Faced Blaster. And so that by itself is not a unique downside in any way. It's just, it's something that you accept when deciding to use something other than the scattergun. It's a pretty freaking obvious thing. And the downside of greater spread, it's really not much of a downside. It really isn't. Because just because your weapon has the potential to shoot pellets in a wider radius doesn't mean it will. I mean, in casual servers at least, which is, you know, where you're going to be using this thing, of course. Because of random bullet deviation, the pellets can go anywhere they want, which means even though the spread is higher, it doesn't mean that's where the pellets are going to go. It just means that they can go over there. Technically, if you got lucky enough, or unless there's something in the game that I'm not aware of that limits this, technically you still could get the same amount of spread, if not tighter, than the scattergun with each shot if you get lucky enough. You just need to get lucky and get a nice tight spread with a shot. So not only is that not much of a downside, the larger spread actually can be considered somewhat an upside in the right circumstances, because since your spread is now higher, you technically have a larger margin for error, which means shots that normally wouldn't hit at all, you might still be able to get some damage out. And even when this thing came out, way back when, because I remember when that happened, I really enjoyed using it because I played on Trade Plaza servers a lot, where there's scouts running around all over the place, and I was like, wow, this thing's actually really good at killing other scouts, because since, you know, other scouts are just as adept as me in dodging shots and whatnot, it allowed me to get damage out when normally I would miss. So it feels like if you against targets that are harder to hit, it can sometimes help you to deal damage, simply because you will be able to get some damage out when normally you wouldn't be able to, if you're lucky, of course. You just gotta, you know, hope that they land where you'd like them to. So that is nice, but you know, even though there are these downsides and upsides that I'm talking about, in the end they all just kind of balance each other out, and it feels like there's not a whole lot to say. Like there's nowhere near enough stuff to talk about for a full-length video with the animation and all this different, you know, in-depth editing and all that. Like, this is definitely the most 2011 weapon at our disposal right now. I mean, maybe the Pain Train or something like that has similar design. But if you don't know what I'm talking about, in 2011, they'd release weapons, and they'd just be like, give it an upside, give it a downside, and there you go, you got a new weapon, like the Liberty Launcher. I think when it released, it had 40% faster projectile speed and one less rocket in the tube, and they called it good there, just like weapon design. But that was pretty common back then, you know, just very, very simple design like that. Nothing really that interesting. And it's the same sort of way, just give it an upside, give it a downside. The reason why the backscatter is considered inferior to the scattergun, rather than just decent side grade, is because it has two downsides, not just one, despite how inconsequential these downsides are. Though, I mean, I must admit, I would use the backscatter if it had those two other shells. Like, as a scout main myself, the reason I use the scattergun over every other primary, and everyone else will attest to this as well, you know, when I want to try hard, of course, is because you get all those shells. You get 6, and every single other one of Scout's primaries gets less. And it just, you know, it makes you wonder why a weapon like this, or the Babyface's blaster for that matter, would need that magazine decrease. This weapon, even though the larger margin for error makes it pretty decent against other scouts, like, you know, to hit shots that you would normally miss, you are still at quite the disadvantage, simply because you're working with 2 less shells. So if you don't kill the other scout with those 4 shots, then he still has 2 more to hit you with, and you're gonna fall behind, which, you know, can very easily get you killed. And in the end, it's just, like I said, so okay in every way that it's barely worth existing. All the downsides just counter the upsides completely, and vice versa. You get mini crits from behind, but it doesn't really matter much because the higher spread means that you likely won't hit very many pellets. So you'll end up doing roughly the same amount of damage you normally would with the scattergun anyways. And the only real time I can see that the increased spread has ever ruined a fight for me is against pyros. Because like when you're playing scout and you're up against a pyro, you know, if you're in a good situation to do it, you can backpedal and stay out of range of their flames, you know, provided they're not shooting flares at you. You can stay out of the range of their fire while shooting them down with your scattergun. But when you do it with this weapon, you'll find that's a lot harder, simply because you can't close the distance to hit more pellets. And you're just more likely to miss the pellets each time. So like when I fought a pyro a while back, each shot only get out like around 30 damage because the pellets were just going wherever they wanted, you know, because of the higher spread and stuff. And in the end, he ended up killing me. I mean, he played the situation pretty well, but with the normal scattergun, I feel like I would have got that kill. That's the only time in when using this weapon that I felt I would have got the kill otherwise with the scattergun. I mean, maybe unless you're talking about moments where I ran out of ammo because of the smaller magazine size. But like I said, that's not unique to this weapon. That's literally every other scout weapon primary has that downside. So you can't really blame this weapon for that. So yeah, in the end, backscatter is good in a sense. I mean, you can one-shot light classes with it from behind if if you're right up against them. But it just is barely even worth existing, like I said. So yeah, that's about it. That's really all I have to say. It's a decent weapon, but only in very specific circumstances. In other times, it just feels like a lesser scattergun, but only barely. So yeah, that's it. Thanks so much for watching. And just so you know, I have a birthday stream happening on the 27th. My birthday, 24 years old. I'm gonna be playing Crash Bandicoot Warped all day long, so it's gonna be fun. Oh, and I'm still working on that huge video project at the same time. I just decided to make this to fill in time, so make sure to tune into that. And I got a Discord if you'd like to join in, maybe help on some projects in the future. So yeah, I'll talk to you later. Thanks so much for watching.